Well, hello and welcome. Today we're going to check our hives for Varroa mites. We're going to check to see how many mites are in each colony, roughly, by doing a wash with some windshield washer fluid. I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it yourself at home. I make these contraptions myself. They're virtually free. They're maybe 50 cents a piece, and the whole mite check doesn't take very long, but it's key if we want to know how to go about spring management. Today I took the wraps off. We're going to have a nice warm day. All the bees are flying in the yard, and if the mite levels are such that they require treatment, I'm going to start my treatments right in and around now. So before I delve further into treatments, I want to know what my mite levels are. It's finally warm enough that I can open up the brood nests, and so I can find the queen, make sure I don't accidentally put her in here, and I can do a colony assessment. At the same time, I'm going to check it for mites. Okay, so I got all my treatment for my mite assessment stuff ready. And now I've been to these colonies recently, and I fed them pollen supplement. So I actually have to remove a little bit of the pollen supplement just to get into the nest. They've been eating that pollen. Probably more than half ate that pollen, which is nice. I'll take an outside frame out just to give me some space in the box. Further remove some debris. Now what I want to do is I want to take bees from the edge of the brood nest for this mite check. Lots of pollen here. That's the pollen, the fresh pollen that they're just bringing in. But no eggs or any young larvae on this frame. So it's unlikely the queen's here just because there's no eggs or young larvae. But it's not impossible. She could be getting ready to lay into this frame. So I'm just going to be careful. I don't see any queen. So I'm just going to set this in front of the hive temporarily, because that's a good candidate. We got pollen, so we're right into the nest, but I don't see no queen. Now we're really into the nest. This will be brood, this frame. I got a nice, beautiful frame of brood, and more pollen. Some capped brood and some open brood. No queen there. Might look at one more frame, because if I can see the queen, I'll use this brood frame as the frame to check. Now a lot of the mites are in the brood. This brood's going to be hatching out over the next few days, so there's still open brood as well. There's the queen. Holy smokes, that queen is large. That queen is huge. You see her? Now I found the queen. She was right in the heart of the nest on a whole bunch of brood. So I'm going to put her back. Means I can use this frame here, and I'll take 3/4 of a cup of bees is the sample size I want. A 1/4 cup of bees is roughly 100 bees, so if I do 3/4 of a cup, it's 300 bees. I've done this many times, so I kind of have an idea, but I've also marked the cup with how many bees. I just put the brood frame right in front of the hive, or right on top of the hive here. I just gently take some of the young bees off the frame. And that's almost the entire sample right there. Just do a little bit more. There you go. That's the entire sample. I put the lid on, and I dunk them. Now I put the colony back together, pretend I wasn't even here. So it was fairly painless. I don't do that many checks throughout a year. I'll do maybe 10% of my hives at any given time. And so today I'll probably do, 20 checks or something. And that was one. I like to take a little bit more time and find that queen. If I don't find the queen, I just really look at the frame over and over again until the point where there's no way there's a queen there. I mean, I've looked at this frame 5 times, there's no queen, and then I'll wash it. So what I like to do is I like to put that there, go on to my next one. I'll let that soak. I'll get 3 going, and then I'll check all 3. So I'll check back in with you in a few minutes once I've done the same process on all these 3 colonies. Okay, so now that I have completed my inspection of these 3 colonies, this guy was quite nice, this was a little smaller, and that was quite big. So we've got a little bit of diversity, just happenstance. I think it is good to get a read from colonies that have different sizes and different brood production stages. But this is just 3. There's 60 colonies in the yard, so I'm going to check another 3 over there, and I'll check 6 out of 60. If I do that on every single one of my yards, I'll get a pretty good idea of what kind of mite levels I'm looking at. So I've got my bees floating in suspension here. I might actually add just a little bit more liquid. I like to use a lot of liquid so that there's less dogpiling of the bees. You can reuse the liquid multiple times. It gets a little cloudy, but you can still see the Varroa mites at the bottom. What ends up happening is I swirl them, and the mites, they fall out of the bees, off the bees and into the liquid. I really like to shake it up quite a bit, and then I look underneath. Do I have any mites? Now sometimes there's little pieces of pollen or little debris, and you have to really make sure you get it in the light to see, are they mites or are they just little bits of pollen and debris? I didn't see any mites there. So I'll usually wash them 3 or 4 times, like re-sink the bees into the liquid, swirl them around for another 10 or 15 seconds. As they're swirling, I kind of take it apart like this. I really shake the bees. Make sure that I'm getting all the bees moved around. It foams up a little bit. And then I go down below and I look. And I'm not seeing any mites. I'm really not seeing any mites. So this is early April. No mites early April. That's really good. That's what I want to see. Because this is a window. I have a treatment window here. I do it with this one as well. My treatment window is kind of the first few weeks of April. I can get in here and flash formic them 4 times, 5 days apart, let's say. It only takes 20 days, and I'd have them all treated by the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, somewhere in there of April. No, wait, today's the 9th. Holy smokes, April's flying by. So they'd be treated by the end of April. But, I don't really start pulling them apart till the beginning of May. Some of them I'd like to pull apart a little earlier, so I might only give them 3 treatments, or I might treat them 4 times, but only 4 days apart. There's a bit of flexibility with the flash formic acid. But if they're so low, virtually undetectable mite levels, well, in this case, actually undetectable mite levels, I'm not going to treat right now. I might treat after I nuke everything out let's say beginning of June. So that's another, that colony there was another one with no mites. I'm gonna wash this here. Nothing. Now, the reason I'm pretty suspicious that the mite levels are quite low is that I had fairly low mite levels last summer, and I treated with Formic Pro, even though my levels were quite low. I mean, they were at the low end of the treatment threshold, so it was, you know, it was approaching 1 to 2%. I think they say in the summer you want to treat if it's anything past 3%, but I like to keep it as low as possible. So I was, you know, seeing 3 or 4 mites in a wash, the odd ones with 5 or 6 mites in a wash. So I said, okay, it was the end of August, middle to end of August, and I put in Formic Pro. It's a 2-week treatment. Another formic acid treatment. Different style. I'm doing the flash this spring. The Formic Pro is kind of like a 2-week sustained treatment. And when I went in afterwards to check my levels, I wasn't finding any mites, but I also wasn't finding any brood. So I was concerned. I thought, did the Formic Pro shut down the brood production? But I wasn't seeing cat brood. I wasn't seeing anything. And so what I realized was the bees actually shut down brood production early last year, quite early. And I accidentally gave them a sustained formic acid treatment during virtually a broodless period. So I got the mites quite low, just in this kind of, you know, coming together of all these factors. So that leads me to believe I might be in a pretty good situation this spring. But you definitely want to deal with mites on the early side of things versus on the late side of things. It's much easier to correct or to prevent a problem than it is to correct one. So I've washed these guys a couple times. I've checked 3 colonies and I haven't found a mite. Now I've done checks on other people's hives that have quite high mite levels, and just the act of dunking the bees into this liquid, just the inertia of dunking the bees, the mites fall off onto the bottom. I did one time I checked a hive that had over 30% infestation. I was getting almost 100 mites in a wash. And that's the one I'm talking about. I put the bees in and just, halfway down you could see mites falling off. So after one mite wash, you usually see 70 or 80% of the mites, and then I will wash them until the level of mites that I see no longer rises. So I might wash it and I'll see 5 mites, then I'll dunk it again, it'll go up to 6, then 6, then 5. So once it starts going back and forth, then you know you're kind of in the zone. If you go and you get 3, and then 7, and then 12, and then 12, and then 12, and then 11, and 12, okay, now we know we're kind of in the 12 range. But I keep on dunking them until I see that pattern again and again, the same level of mites in the wash. Alright, so here I'm in the other corner of the yard, and I've done 3 more washes, 3 more bee collections. This guy was sort of a medium-sized colony. This guy was quite large, not over large, but you know, really nice size, tight brood nest, lots of pollen, lots of food reserves. And so I actually marked this with the queen excluder because next week I'm going to be grafting, and this guy is a candidate for maybe pulling some grafting material out of it. It's just kind of the colony that I like. It didn't use too much food. It's got a good population. The spring dwindle didn't hit it too hard. The brood pattern looks really nice. I mean, it's almost the same size as this other colony here, but you can tell it's going to explode because the brood nest is so much bigger. Found myself a mite. 1 Varroa mite. And that's in the first wash here. Oh, Varroa! I don't like seeing mites. I mean, you know they're in here. You do all this trouble to get rid of them, but it sucks seeing one. Still just one. Oh boy. I wonder if the trick to do it is to do a partial treatment now and a partial treatment later. And then you kind of get the best of both worlds. See, I don't want to do all the treatment right now when there's only a little bit of mites and all the mites are in the brood. So I don't want to waste the treatment. But at the same time, if I don't do it now, then there could be too many later. Oh, would you look at that? A second mite, I think. Yeah. Two mites. Yeah. So if I'm taking, this is my 4th colony I'm sampling. I already found 0.6%. We gotta hit them. Gotta hit them. Kind of knew that, but I was hoping. The other ones was looking really good. Thought, you know, I did hit them real broodless. Hit them real broodless last summer, last fall. Can you skip a spring treatment? It's not really recommended. The spring treatment, you know, if you kill a mite, I think it was Medhat Nazar out of, he used to be the head apiculturist in Alberta. He used to say, if you kill a mite in the spring, it's like killing, I don't know if he said killing like 100 or killing 1,000 in the fall, you know. They breed and they breed and they breed, so this is the time to get them. If you're using the synthetic acaricides like Apivar or fluvalinate, what do they call that? Apistan or Varroa or any of these things. If you're using those, you can throw them in early and you get really good protection. But I don't want to be using those. I wanted to go with these organic acids. There's no persistence in the comb. They don't accumulate in the comb. You know, they're a little bit harder on the bees for the time that they're in there, but then they're only in there for such a short period of time. I'm seeing something. Is that a mite? No, I think that's a bit of debris. Looks kind of like a mite. I think that's debris. This guy here is actually first colony of the season that I'm going to have to put liquid food onto. Garce is driving by, but I don't think he saw me. Oh, don't you tell me you're a mite too. No, just a piece of debris. So, a lot of pondering. You know, if you're a beekeeper out there that does only do formic acid, oxalic acid treatments, and you also, you know, raise queen cells and run mating nukes and that kind of stuff, I'd be curious to know your timing of things. You know, we have a late spring. You know, if we had an early spring, I'd have tons of time to treat. It's a later spring. The mite levels, I mean, okay, 0.3%. I found, or no, that's 0.6%. So the odd colony is going to be too high come the middle of May. When the nukes go out, they have to be under 1%. That's the only way, that's the only fair way you can do it. You sell a nuke that has too many mites, it's just not fair. The person receives it, and then it's no good. They're going to run into problems in the fall, and then that's going to spread to the other bees in the apiary, and it's no good. You got to have real low levels. So, anyways, that's where I'm at right now. I've checked 6 colonies. So far, one of the colonies has 2 mites. It's not a panic, but it's definitely something that makes me think I should be getting at least some treatment into these things in the next couple weeks. If not today. I gotta go to another yard, so I think what I'll do is save the liquid. Save save the liquid, use it a couple more times, and in the meantime, I'll think on it, get a better idea of what I want to do here regarding mites. The one that has the mites in it, I can't reuse that, I guess. Make sure you clean these out pretty good, because if there's mites to start with, it's going to throw off your whole, you know. Okay, so check back with you in a little bit.